There's basically two stories about Steve you hear. One is that he was a saint and he was perfect in all regards, which was somewhat true. But the other story that you hear is, basically he was like a screaming lunatic, and he would just run around and yell at people in elevators and fire people in meetings. And some people have all these, kind of awful, horrible things. And I think on this, I think the reality was somewhere in the middle. At least what I saw and what I heard from people who worked with him for a very long time. Was basically he was absolutely intolerant of anything less than first-class work. If you brought him first-class work, and if you were top in your field and super diligent and on top of everything and had all the details figured out and had it all, knew what you were doing and were really good, he was like the best manager you were ever going to work with, and the best CEO you were ever going to work with. And the thing that comes up when people talk about who worked with him closely is, I did the best work of my life working for him, right? And part of that is because he really appreciated, understood the quality of great work, and he didn't tolerate anything less than that, which meant that everybody around you also hit that bar. His approach to performance management is everybody's going to be doing top-end work. If they're not going to be here. As a consequence, the best people in the world are going to love being here because they're surrounded by the best people in the world. And so the stories that you hear about, the screaming or firing people in meetings or whatever, it was always a side effect of it's not first-class work. And this is why there was so much love for him, right? Is the core thing was I do the best work of my life working for him. Having said that, also Steve himself matured, right? And so he started the company in '76 with Steve Wozniak. He built, they built Apple I, Apple II. They built the Lisa, actually, which failed. That was the other thing, by the way, is not every Steve Jobs project succeeded, right? And he learned a lot from the failures. And now everybody's forgotten the failures, but you can read about them on Wikipedia. And he had the Lisa was before the Macintosh, and it was a complete failure. But then the Macintosh, started to work. But before the Macintosh really took off, he brought in the wrong CEO, and then there was a revolt inside the company. And he got fired, and then he spent 10 years out of the company, right? Which is actually when I got to know him, is when he was off doing Next, and Next was like a complete wipeout. Like it was years of real pain and agony. And then and he had this little side project nobody understood, which is this little graphics company, Pixar. It turned out. Anyway, the point is, by the time he came back into Apple in like '97, I think maybe he'd been out for like 12 years. And what people who knew him better than I did said, he actually learned how to actually be a great CEO, not at Apple, but at Next, because he spent 12 years actually doing it the hard way, where he wasn't being showered with praise. He didn't have the magic touch. The product fundamentally didn't take. He had to, as we say now, pivot. One of the great stories is it was a perfect cube. It was a perfect 12-inch cube, 12 by 12 by 12. And there's a famous story of his designers at Next when they were designing it. They came in with the sort of optimal, Pareto optimal hardware design, built for manufacturing cost optimization, which was 12 inches by 12 inches by 13 inches. And he said, "F you, go back and make it a perfect cube." And they're like, "Steve, that's gonna double the cost." And he's like, "I don't fucking care. Make it a cube." And so it was like a perfect cube. It was slow as shit. It took forever. The thing was just it was like walking through molasses to use the thing. Completely flopped. Nobody wanted it. Pivoted the company to software. Nobody wanted the software. Anyway, the point is, that was really hard, and he had to make every part of the company work. He had to try to figure out how to optimize it the hard way. He had to retain a team, through 12 years of basically failure. What basically people say is he had this incredible growth and innovation skill set from Apple Phase 1, and then he had an incredible management skill set from the sort of wilderness years. And then, so by the time he came back to Apple in '97, he was both. And he was also at that point a great CEO, but he maybe not would have ever become the Steve Jobs that we know had he not gone through the hard period.